Hi guys, welcome to Finding Joy in the Mundane. I am your host, Aya Nichols, and today's episode will be about finding joy beyond the diagnosis. And the main topic of it will be about how to find purpose and joy within our own story that we didn't necessarily write ourselves, that had been written for us, and that we didn't necessarily choose, but now have to live with. So I will start with how you see yourself. When you are given a diagnosis, many people stop seeing themselves as a person and start seeing themselves as their disease or whatever diagnosis, whatever label they have been given. Labels are really hard for people to carry around with them because it starts eating at their true identity, especially when you're younger and you haven't developed who you are yet. Being put a label on that is very damaging to self-esteem and their sense of autonomy, because now they feel like something has been attached to them that they cannot get rid of. Or what if it's something that was said about you or written about you? I remember when I turned 18, I asked my parents to show me my foster care files. I was curious on all the different notes that they had said about me. And the first time I ever read it, I could only get through about 2 pages because of the way they spoke about me. Things like I is a very aggressive, manipulative person who constantly wants attention. I was a very hurt, broken person who needed to be loved. But I thought I was aggressive, I was manipulative. And those words stuck with me for so long because I started questioning who I am and then how other people saw me. I started questioning my own reality. I wouldn't consider myself an aggressive person. I am a passionate person. I'm not manipulative, but I can be persuasive. One of the words that was said about me that really hurt was being called nosy. When I went into my first group home, the first thing they said about me was that I was very nosy. I asked questions all the time to the staff and to the people around me, and I got all up in their business. I was 13. Mind you, I've been in the country for a year, and I wanted to know the people around me so that way I feel safe. But to them, I was nosy. In reality, I'm just a curious person. Those two terms are very different, yet they could look the same, and they would feel the same whenever you label someone nosy or curious. Nosy has a bad connotation. Curious is neutral. No one can blame you for being curious. Nosy is something that is a flaw within you that you have to fix. So from then on, every time I would go into a foster home, they would read my file and they would see that this is the person that I am. Before they even met me, they've already decided who I am based off of everything that they've read, based off of someone else's perception of who I am. They didn't even give me a chance to show them who I am. And that hurt because as a child, you need to be given the freedom to grow who you are, to understand who you are, and to mature who you are. But when that freedom's taken away from you and you've been put now in this box, you become the box that they've put you in. You label someone as aggressive, so every time they get upset, you put that back on them, how aggressive they are, so they become even more offended and more aggressive. If you treat someone like a prisoner, they will act like a prisoner. That is why it's so important that we are careful with our words, especially when it's to people. And even more so, whenever it's attached with a diagnosis. In recovery, we have this very strong belief that we do not say, I am bipolar. You are not bipolar. You are a person who struggles with bipolar disorder, but it's only a small part of who you are. Just like how whenever I was getting really upset and to them looked like aggression was actually a trauma response, they couldn't see past the labels that was put on me. And other people, especially with mental health, the minute they get a diagnosis, sometimes it makes them feel better because it finally confirms the fact that they're different. We were all made different. We don't need a book of 1,000 different terms and conditions to tell us that we're broken. We're messed up people. We're not perfect. But to then take that and have it be your entire identity, then you sell yourself short and you become whatever it is that this label or this diagnosis is. You know, sometimes the diagnosis can explain our behavior, but it doesn't define who we are. And that doesn't mean that we can't change and grow. and heal. I'm a person with trauma, but I'm not a traumatic person. But I'm not a traumatized person. I don't go around being triggered all the time anymore because I've taken the time to sit, deal with my issues, and heal. The thing about having a diagnosis or having a chronic illness or mental health issues is the way it takes over your life. When I was first diagnosed with an eating disorder, I was shocked because I didn't think that I had an eating disorder. I thought I was healthy. I thought that I was a healthy person who cared about eating well and exercising. Yes, but not everyone would want to run 6 miles a day and then eat below 300 calories. That is an eating disorder. But to me, it was the way I lived my life. And what really, at the bottom of it, it was all about me trying to control what other people saw, was being consumed by other people's labels of me. I grew up as a chunkier kid, so I've been called fat a majority of my childhood. So by the time I developed my eating disorder, my number one goal was to never have anyone ever call me that again. So because of that, I drove myself close to death trying to protect myself from ever being called fat again. I was more worried about how other people saw me and what they would think of me than how I saw myself and what I thought of myself and what God thought of me. All I ever did all day, every day was try to control other people's perceptions that I lost who I was. And at that point, there wasn't any of me left to be able to show them. So then all I had was my diagnosis. All I had was my eating disorder. It became my best friend, my identity, and it was the thing I was most proud of. Because to me, I had achieved something that I had been wanting for a really long time. And it took me almost 6 years of intense therapy to finally let go of that part so that way other parts of me can grow. That's the issue when we center ourselves with one label or one diagnosis, then other parts of us don't mature. So things like creativity or my love for fashion or my love for cooking, all of that was completely void within my life because all I focused on was how I looked to other people and how I felt within myself, within my body. Everything was turned to the focus of me. And whenever you are labeled with an eating disorder, it is very hard to be able to get over that because you have to eat. Food is an essential part of life. So it is something that you have to face every day. You don't get to choose to walk away from it. You don't have the option of abstaining from it. That's how it got there. A lot of times with healing from eating disorders, we like to call him Ed, to start disassociating ourselves from him because again it became all consuming. And finally, when we start calling him outside of our body, we're able to start regaining who we are and regaining the power to be able to walk away from it. It was easy to live in my eating disorder. It's easy to live in my diagnosis, and that was it. I was selling myself short the entire time, and I was stopping myself from being able to fully recover because here's the thing, even though it's a diagnosis, you can still be healed. Jesus can still heal you. But if you're so attached to it that you won't let it go, you can get as much healing and it be completely gone out of your life, but you still will carry that weight with you. I'm a foster kid. That's a label. I am a girl that grew up in the foster care system. There's a difference. Because whenever you think of foster care, you think broken, abandoned, hurt people. And even though all of that was true at one point in my life, it is not true now. I am fully loved, fully cared for. I don't have to live my life attached to what happened to me 15 years ago. But that is a choice that I had to make. And the only way I was able to walk away from it was with the strength that the Lord gave me. Because when you were born, when the Lord created you, He didn't create you broken. We just live in a broken world. We were never meant to carry around different diagnoses and disorders. You're not going to have that diagnosis in heaven. Some people really take pride because it becomes their entire identity, whatever label it is. It could be like a runner. I always wanted to be known as a runner because I hated running. And even though I had been running for, at this point, 5 years, I still wouldn't call myself a runner because I had this idea that I had to run a marathon to be able to be called a runner versus just, I'm a person who enjoys running. So that part of my life consumed me instead. It became part of my identity. So whenever I couldn't run anymore, because I wasn't allowed, and I didn't have the strength, nor the nutrients, I felt like I lost a part of myself. A part of myself that I tried so hard to build that now was gone. So you can take that and you can put any label. You can do anything thing that you want to be, and if you make it the center of your life, it will consume you and take over, and you will be actually left with less than what you started off with. You yourself, you will lose who you are to that label, to that diagnosis. But that is a choice. That was my choice. I allowed it to have that much control over who I was. To me, being skinny meant everything. That if I was skinny, I don't know, though I thought everything in my life would be better. It wasn't. And to be honest, I wasn't better. So we take on these labels, and then we come to the Lord, and the Lord asks us to put them down. And sometimes it may be the hardest thing we can do, because it is letting go of a part of yourself, knowing that God can fill that part even more and grow it even better than any label or disease ever could. It may sound weird that we would even want to associate ourselves with these, but this is exactly what happens, and I've seen it happen over and over again. Some people take pride in their work, like being a lawyer, and if they can't practice law anymore, then they feel worthless. Then all that schooling, everything that they have gone through in life was for nothing. Their own existence is for nothing because they can't be a lawyer anymore, as if they don't have anything else to offer. But they do. We do. You are more than what your work is. You are more than what a label is. You are more than who they say or write about you is. You are much more complicated than one diagnosis ever could give you. You can have the same diagnosis as someone else, and it will be different. You will be different from them, because you are not them. You don't have the same personality. You don't have the same past. You don't have the same attributes. You don't have the same way of coping. You can feel similar, the fact that both of you struggle with emotional regulation, but that doesn't mean that you are automatically now this broken person that should be tiptoed around just because you disclose that you have bipolar. I don't have bipolar, but that was a diagnosis that I had to deal with. So even when the diagnosis is wrong, we still carry it. And then we tell other people, and then other people treat us that way. Only if we let them. Embracing who you are and the strength you find in the Lord isn't about hiding aspects of yourself or pretending that they don't exist. It's about being able to take ownership of it and surrendering it to the Lord, knowing that we're not perfect and that it's okay if parts of us are broken. That's why we have a healer. But if we were never even willing to move past it, then you can be healed all you want, but you still will feel that brokenness in your soul until you let it go. Not only do we do this to ourselves, but we do it to other people, especially with social media. You see bits and pieces of other people's life, and we assume that they're one way. You assume that because I am well dressed, that I have all this money to spend on clothes. I don't. I love thrift shopping. Most of my clothes cost less than $1. This was 25 cents. But unless I told you that, you wouldn't have known. You would have just assumed. That's what I'm saying. We can be more than what our image even is. We can be more than what people say we are. We're allowed to change and grow. So just because you were one thing one way at one point in your life doesn't mean that you will always be that. If anything, you growing from that is a testimony. The way to start shifting this point of view is through gratitude and through refocusing who you are and grounding it in the Lord. Because once you start realizing who your maker is and that he made you specifically designed, you wouldn't feel as much shame as most of us do now. I'm not athletic at all, and I hated myself for it. My sister Sarah, very athletic. Give her a ball. She can conquer it. Me, I will drop it. That's why I like running. It doesn't really require anything than just, going. But I hated myself, and every time I couldn't do a sport, I would be like, oh, I wish I was just athletic. I wish I could have this attribute. By doing that, I am discrediting the attributes I do have. I may not be athletic, but I do have a good fashion sense. I'm good at interior design. I'm good at computers. But I'm so focused on the fact that I'm not athletic that I miss out on all of that. This especially happens with the church, because within ministry, it does start consuming people. We are called to ministry, but once we don't have that anymore, or once that ministry changes, some of us don't know how to continue serving because they just thought that they were meant to serve in one way, that they forgot that we can do anything in Jesus and be anything in Jesus. You can be a pastor at one point in your life, and you can be a member in one point in your life. And that's okay. Just because now that you're a member doesn't mean that you were never a pastor or that you don't have the capabilities, but that doesn't also mean that that's all you have to offer. You can become a worship leader. You can do the technology thing, behind the scenes. Our purpose doesn't define us. Our past does not define us. The only person who defines us is Jesus. He is the only attribute that we need to feel secure within ourselves. His grace really is sufficient for us. He really can give us and be everything we need. But if we're too busy looking at different labels, different things, we will miss him. You will miss what he has for you. There's a passage in the Bible where it talks about the different roles in the body of Christ. How one can be an eye and the other one an ear and another one a mouth. So like one person's good at seeing, one person's good at talking, one person's good at hearing. But if they value being an eye over being an ear, then the body would be missing its ears because the ear is too busy trying to become an eye. My ear will never be able to see anything. And my eye physically will never be able to hear anything. I need them both. Thank God our bodies don't decide which one is more important than the other. It needs all of it. So I pray that this helps you let go of all the different labels that have been placed on you and that we place on ourselves, and to walk in freedom in who God made us to be. Because once we allow ourselves to be free, then we are able to actually allow other people and serve them freely. We don't have to have them be anything other than themselves. I don't need anyone to make me feel important. I already feel important. My God died for me. That's important. So I don't need to go and seek that validation from anyone else, and especially not within a label or a diagnosis. So I'm here to tell you to let it go and to fully take on the person that you were meant to be, and to give them that chance to change and grow. Because who I was when I was 15 is not who I am now. Thank God. Who you are now will not be who you will be in 20 years. But I know for a fact in 20 years, I will still have the Lord. I may not have anything else, but I will still love the Lord. Because that is my only label, my only attribute that I myself have attached myself to. And that I allow others now to attach me to. So be careful about what you say about other people, what you write about them, especially social workers. Please be careful with your words and how you describe a child. Always use the kinder word, because whenever they're having to look at themselves in the mirror, those words are going to be the ones that pop up, and it will take a lot to bring that down. Once you start letting go of who you think you are, you're finally able to be who you were created to be. You stop listening to what other people say about you, and you start listening to what God says about you. And that's redeemed. You stop paying attention to how the world sees you, and stop seeking its validation, and only seek validation from the Lord that is always giving you. What more validation than dying on the cross do you need? It's all I need. That doesn't mean that I won't struggle with my trauma at one point in my life. That will still be something that may come up, but it's not all of me. What happened to me is not all of me. It's only a very, very small part that now has created other better parts. So it's not about denying anything, but fully embracing who you are. It's about fully embracing the person that God made you to be, and trusting that He knows you better than you. Your diagnosis may shape your story, but it doesn't define it, and it certainly does not define your joy. So don't give it that power. Be free from the labels, be free from the diagnosis, and walk in the freedom that has been bought for us. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.